Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm hanging out today with J.Gray from our Talsorian Games. How are you?
I am doing just fine. How are you guys doing over there in Nerdarchy Land?
We're doing pretty good, man. It's today is nice because even though I'm in the basement, kind of a bit of a dungeon here, I can see some sunlight over yonder, so it does make me happy. Uh,
Nice.
so things are pretty good. So as always, folks, there are links in the description. But if you'd be so kind to introduce yourself and kind of what it is you guys do.
Sure. After I mute the YouTube channel, because I realized I didn't do that. My name is J.Gray. I am the media ambassador for our Talsorian Games, which is just fancy talk for the guy who talks online with people and on behalf of the company. I'm also a game developer and designer, writer, layout artist, and editor. I have worked in one form or another on various products ranging from third-party Pathfinder stuff and D&D 5e stuff and Hero Kids stuff to more recently The Witcher, Cyberpunk, and Castle Falkenstein lines over at our Talsorian.
Nice. You've got to play in a lot of different sandboxes there.
I have been fortunate. That's something I always tell people. Every once in a while, someone asks me a question: is how do you become a pro game professional? I say the first thing you do is you be as versatile as possible, because if you're just playing one game, even if that game is the biggest game in the world, you will not be as good a designer as you can be, because the more games you play, the more ideas you get, or the more ideas you can tastefully borrow in a completely non-stealing way to add to your other games, and the better your game design becomes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of times, even if we do a video on a different games or different system, we'll talk about it for its merits and then be like, hey, but if you're only playing D&D, because that's what our channel talks about a lot, I'm like, here are some of the takeaways and how some ways that playing this other game will make your D&D game better.
Yeah,
um, and so there's always great things that you can borrow from other systems, um, to incorporate and just make you more versatile as a GM or a player.
absolutely, and it works both ways. Advantage is a great idea to take into a lot of games from D&D, and vice versa. I've borrowed the essential concept of hero points or action points or whatever you like to call them, from various systems, and brought them into Dungeons and Dragons games.
So, of the games our Talsorian is working on, do you have a preference? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, my favorite's Castle Falkenstein, which is a game of fact, fiction, and fantasy in an alternative Victorian age, a world where fairies uh, flit through the moonlight, and yet Sherlock Holmes is solving mysteries, and Phileas Fogg is sailing around the world, possibly in a hot air balloon, but also possibly in an aeroship, which is steam powered and full of all kinds of intriguing clockwork.
Oh, so there's a lot of genre mashing there.
There is a decent amount of genre mashing, all within uh, all the best parts of the Steam era genres, various
Yeah.
permutations put together. And the best part about it is it's a rules light, story heavy game. You have journals instead of character sheets, and you play with cards and not dice, because only cads and bounders roll dice. Real gentle people play with cards.
Nice. Is are cards the randomizer, or is it more of a resource management?
There's a little bit of resource management in it, in that you have a hand,
Yeah.
and therefore you can keep cards or decide to play cards. But it's also they're also a bit of a randomizer in that you're drawing from a deck. It's interesting because modeling a deck of cards, which not only has the 52 possible cards in the deck, but also different combinations, not just numbers ranging from ace to uh, 10, 11, 12, 13, sorry, counting in my head, to the king, but also the four suits. You get what's called, what Mike Pondsmith, our boss, tends to call a holographic system,
Yeah.
where you can do a lot more. It's like if you had dice and all the different colored dice meant something different, so that it didn't just matter what number you rolled, but what color and number you rolled together.
Does a standard set of cards work?
Yes, it works with a standard poker deck.
Nice. That's pretty
Yeah.
nice. But also sweet opportunities for you guys to put out really cool cards.
Yeah, well, actually, you can get a free deck which you can print out yourself. We
Yeah.
do not have a deck right now. It's an older line. It is not fallow. It's in publication. You can get all the books in it, and we actually added 3 books to it this year that were
Yeah.
done originally by a licensee, Fat Goblin Games, transcribed, as we like to say, by myself. Because we didn't write these books. These books came to us from the world of Castle Falkenstein across the Fairy Vale, sent by a friend of Mike's who was accidentally transported there. I should point out that the entire line is written in character, but including the rules, because he wrote rules. Because he's a gamer, what's he going to do over there? He made a role-playing game about his experiences. But we're not currently developing new material for it beyond that. So you can catch up and know that you have everything you need to play.
That's almost like its own genre now. That seems to be starting to really catch on in mainstream, because you had Carnival Row, you have the Nevers that just started, and also Shadow and Bone. They all have that kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I think it's this basic. People are looking at it and saying, well, we could do a Regency / Victorian era thing, like what was it? Minds Blanking, Sex on Stairs, Netflix series.
Not sure.
Someone will know what I'm talking about. It ends with ton, which
Bridgeton, Barrington, something. I think my wife and daughter.
Bridgington, yeah. So you could do that where you got you somewhere between Jane Austen and the 1900s, the end of the 18th century, 19th century. You could do that, or you could, do Jane Austen and Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, where you throw in a little extra. And I think part of it is just role playing is a little more exciting with it, and part of it is that if you could do something really cool, why not? We've been exploring steampunk, as it were, for a few decades now. And I should point out, Castle Falkenstein was originally published in 1994, so we've been doing it for quite a while. And it's just a case of, well, if we could do this, what if we can do the twist? People believed in fairies back then. In fact, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle believed in fairies back then. So why not have real fairies? But if there was something to the things they were believing in, it was a time of exploration when anything was possible, where science was exploring whether there was life beyond death by trying to weigh the soul, by weighing a body just before and after death. So, why not take that to its logical conclusion and say, well, if these things are true, what would the world be like, and how can you play it?
I feel like that's something I should have known that people tried doing, but I didn't. The idea of weighing a soul by weighing the body before and after death. That's pretty weird and morbid.
There were whole societies, the movie Flatliners, where they take turns dying and coming back so they can see what happens. That's not a new phenomenon. There were actual people doing things like that. They put them in tubs of ice and they give them various drugs to reduce their heartbeats, and then they bring them back because they are starting to learn how to bring people back from near death, and then they would describe their experiences. And that's, there were societies dedicated to exploring scientifically the concept of life after death, because everyone believed in it, but at the time there was no scientific evidence. But at the same time, we had spiritualism and the Fox sisters and people attempting to contact the dead, whether they are doing so with legitimate belief that they could, or they are running scams to get people's money. It was a big thing. Spiritualism was its own movement, its own religion.
I would have loved to have been in the room when they pitched that to somebody. Look, we're going to kill you, but don't worry about it, because we're going to bring you right back. People are like, sign me up.
And they draw lots. Well, you also remember, by this point, it was executions were still entertainment.
That's true.
People paid to watch autopsies. They literally they had you would have a little stadium in a college or a medical school, and people would pay to get in to sit around in the stadium and watch down the floor as people cut other people open. They were fascinated with the concept of death and what was there and how it worked, and everybody wanted to learn as much as they could. And it was this age of rapid scientific progress.
Sounds like a whole generation of sociopaths.
It's that too. They didn't have TV, they didn't have radio, they had to do something.
True. Let
They
me
couldn't do
watch.
horror movies,
Let me
so
watch someone carve up a cadaver.
yeah, they couldn't watch Friday the 13th
They
or
didn't have
Dracula.
Doctor Popper, Pipple Popper.
Yeah, yeah,
They had that instead.
yeah. No,
Uh,
no, no people doing stupid tricks on Netflix on YouTube. So
so, how did you get into working in the industry?
okay, I got out of gaming for a while. I got into gaming, same way everyone did through Gateway Gaming. In my case, the Marvel Superheroes role playing game from TSR way back in the day, and I played for quite a while, and then my family and I moved from North Carolina to New York, where oddly enough it was harder to find people to game with, and so we stopped gaming for a while. I ran into some people. They said we want to play D&D, and I said I can run D&D. Why not? And from there, I was like, oh well, fourth edition's not so much my thing. It's a good game, but what about this Pathfinder thing I hear about? And the thing about Pathfinder is, at the time, everybody and their great aunt were producing Pathfinder supplements for third-party games, third-party publishers, and I was like, oh, I could do that. And I started pitching ideas and writing for publishers, and it snowballed from there because I got to work with different publishers. Those publishers had different projects. Sometimes they were Pathfinder, sometimes they were increasingly 5e. I had one publisher who was doing kid-oriented stuff, so they also did stuff for the Hero Kids game, which you can get on Drive-Thru RPG. And at one point, I said to the guy that ran Fat Goblin Games, Rick Hershey, whose art you've seen if you've played any third-party Pathfinder stuff, I said, my favorite game is Castle Falconstein. And he said, I love Castle Falconstein. I said, if you could get that license, I would write for free. He said, okay. A week later, he said, hey, I got that license. I said, I'm not writing for free.
Oh, the bait and switch.
Yeah. But the answer was I did several books on that, and the Pondsmith family, who run our Talsorian, they are our Talsorian at its heart, were impressed enough with my work and with the work I did promoting it that when they decided that they needed someone to handle social media and help them with press and stuff like that, they said, hey, you want a job? And I was like, yeah, cool. I'm not going to turn down a job in the industry.
No, it is super cool. Although they did give you like a really shitty job because social media, it's like it can be like a personal hell. It's what purgatory might look like.
I will admit there are days when it's got me down, but for the most part, we have a fantastic community, people who really are passionate about gaming, and for every voice that's kind of jerkish, there is 9 there saying, hey, no, that is not the way you behave, and willing to say, we don't just, if someone says I like this, the first reaction should not be a list of 20 things why you should not like this or what's wrong with the thing
So
you
bizarre.
like. It should be, cool. Here are some good things. In fact, on our Discord channel server, we have a rule which is very specifically, you can criticize a game, but know the difference between I dislike this thing and here are a few reasons why, and this thing sucks, with the implication that it is bad, and if you like it, you are bad.
Yeah.
We have very specific rules about behavior.
Criticism and attacking are two different things.
Yeah. We're not going to say you can't say a game has flaws or that this particular rule or mechanic or plot element doesn't work for you. That's fine. But knowing the difference between, I don't like this thing, or this thing does not work for my group, and this rule is terrible no matter what you do, is especially when it's obviously working for other people. It's important.
Yeah, for sure. I know, like, I do a lot of our social media. And one of the best things is when I got banished from Facebook and I can no longer manage it over there. One of the best things and worst things, I realized how many connections I had over there and how many friends. But, and I had to hand the reins over. So now it's somebody else's problem.
I haven't had too many problems with Facebook. I find keeping my personal friends only helps a whole lot.
Yeah.
But maybe other companies may experience different things, but I do find that Facebook is very good for announcing things, but not very good for generating conversations.
Yeah. So we've always gotten more traction over on Facebook than anywhere else. Like as far as people like engaging with whatever we're doing, as far as putting out products or releasing something, and then like going and checking it out and stuff. Where Twitter, not so much. When you look at the insights, there's like nothing going on.
Ah, we're almost completely opposite. Twitter has been
Yeah.
great for us, and I think it's just a matter of you get your audience, and your audience is in the right place, and you should always try to grow your audience. But it's good to have a
It
core.
might be a demographics thing too. Like it might just like we might just skew older, and have an older audience, and old people are on Facebook now.
Yeah, and meanwhile, our TikTok is just sitting there, nothing's happening, no one likes us.
Yeah. None of us can figure out TikTok, and and then Twitter's doing its thing. So
Oh, it's like it's one of those things like, yeah, TikTok. We're gonna show videos of dice rolling, I guess, or we'll show them the book.
You guys got to get on there and do some TikTok dances.
Yes, obviously we have to do the Cyberpunk.
No, there's a very much a thriving like D&D TikTok where
I'm sure there is.
So and so I imagine there's also other RPGs on there as well. I haven't found as many, but I mean like that's always the gorilla in the room anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was surprised at how many people are on there just like talking about gaming and games, and some of it is just showing off their dice and rolling their dice too.
Well, and TikTok skews younger in general,
Yeah.
and that's not a bad thing. Young people. I'm old now. Hello, fellow kids.
Yeah. Oh, I think it skews younger and towards women too. So, like, if a game company does figure it out, I think it'd probably be good for you, especially if you want to like broaden like demographics and stuff.
Oh yeah, it's very important to broaden your demographics and to be inclusive and have all people from all walks of life, men, women, people who are neither, people who are both, playing.
When we initially started with the YouTube channel, it's like women to men was like 99 to 1%, and then like we slowly eked up to a whopping like 5%. And I don't know if it's just a YouTube thing, or I've had some women tell me they just think that a lot more women use YouTube, without being signed into an account as well.
Well, I think women, for very obvious reasons, are much more careful about their footprint generally on social media and the like. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. It made sense to me as well. But it is cool to see like the shift, even if it's a little bit. And also, like, I just imagine most of our audience probably looks like us, and we're kind of like old. So.
But yeah, like you said, younger people are playing. My daughter's library runs a D&D game that's been going on for 2-3 years now.
Yeah.
And that's just astounding to me because I cannot imagine a library when I was a kid running D&D, not just because of the Satanic Panic, which I don't think would have been too much of a problem, just because it wouldn't have occurred to them. And now these days, libraries have community outreach and youth programs. And so, if this is happening, they're doing things kids want to do, and the kids are enjoying the heck out of it. Even now, they're playing online these days because, they can't play in person.
If you don't mind me asking, how old is your daughter?
My daughter is 12.
Well, okay, so my daughter's 16, has no interest. I tried, with, I think it was like 4th edition. I tried to get her into it, and she was younger, so she was in the Bratz at the time. Yeah, not Bratz, not the Bratz. No, the Monster High dolls.
Monster High dolls, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a big thing. So like I even like tried making a character modeled after one of the Monster High characters, and like the only thing that she seemed really interested in was the using the spell cards and playing them like they were like Pokemon cards or something, which was funny because she's never played Pokemon or been into that either.
Well, with our kids, we started with board games.
Yeah.
Sentinels of the Multiverse is a particular favorite in our household. But we also play Settlers and a few other games, and that helped a lot. And I think we have done some gaming. We did Girl Scout game nights where my daughter's Girl Scout, and we would run for the council. We trained several other GMs, my wife and I, and we ran for everybody. And then when the library started, she was all in, and that I think is she enjoys playing with kids her own age.
Yeah. That
And that's a lot of fun without mom and dad being there, because it's not that mom and dad are a drag specifically, but I think she feels a little less watched,
yeah.
so to speak, a little freer to just have fun, and that helps a lot too.
Yeah, my daughter's also a Girl Scout, but I feel like her troop was like more like Troop Beverly Hills. So I don't know if you remember. Oh, it's my.
I remember the
I might be just dating myself more.
Shelley, not Shelley Duvall, from Cheers.
Um,
the person who played Diane on Cheers. We're terrible. We're old people. Terrible at names.
I never know who actresses and actors are.
Yeah. But I do remember the movie. That was back in the age when I watched anything if it was on cable, because we had 3 channels.
Now, my son eventually did get into gaming. He's still a bit of a casual, but you know, for him it was weird. Like, so the game that stuck for him was Mutants and Masterminds.
Oh, Steve Kenson is a fantastic designer.
He's awesome. I love the stuff that he does. And also, you mentioned the Marvel Superheroes RPG, which with each edition you can tell like he was taking more and more inspiration from that system.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the further as they were experimenting, they were learning how far they can get away from D20.
Yeah,
the Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes. And the further
bones.
they got, the better the game got.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I recommend Icons, which is another system he developed, which is completely non D20.
It's also Bash too, right?
I don't think he developed Bash. There's several superhero games these days out there. There's Masks. If there's a system, Cypher just kickstarted a superhero game. So there's the Marvel Renaissance has definitely led to a lot of superhero games, ranging from hardly any rules to extremely crunchy. So you'll find something that appeals to you playing 4-color or Grim and Gritty.
Yeah, when you mentioned that you started with Marvel Superhero RPG,
I did.
I thought it was funny because a couple of years ago we streamed 2 seasons of that game on our channel, and I always got such a kick out of it because I'm like, this game has been dead for like 30 years.
Yeah. Well, Jeff Grubb, the main designer of that game, was designing a game ahead of its time. These days, few people don't generally want to look at charts and tables in order to have to play, but the color charts, the color shift charts on that thing are, they still hold up today as such a solid, strong mechanic. I got to play Marvel Superheroes in a charity game a while back. Last year, was it? God, yes, last year. 2020 was 10 years long. With David Gallagher, who has written, he wrote Winter Soldiers.
Was it the charity game with all the different industry people?
Yeah, I got to play with a whole bunch of comic book people, and it was so cool.
Were you the GM or were you?
No, David was the GM. I was playing Nadia Van Dyne, the second of the second Wasp 2.
Okay.
The daughter of Henry Pym and his first wife. And that was just a lot of fun to just play with these people who just knew comic books inside and out. And it was just so neat. It was just this great experience.
Yeah, I also feel like that system was ahead of its time as far as like the leveling up mechanics, the essentially spending your XP in game narratively. So
and that was one of the first games. I mean, you used it to buy power stunts.
Yeah,
and to do really neat things. So it was one of those first games to really get in the concept of a meta plot currency.
Yes.
Which was really neat. Now there are a lot of innovations in that, and I'm always a sucker for a game with a good, solid, random character generation system that's more than just I roll some stats, like Traveler or Marvel Superheroes or Cyberpunk with its life paths. A game that really gives you I've just spent 30 minutes rolling on these tables, and now I've got to figure out how these results turn into a story. I love that. That really fires up the writer in me.
especially when you get to the advanced Marvel superhero book, or not the advanced one. It was there's another one. I forget the name of it though.
Oh, the Ultimate Power book where there was like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
100 pages of powers,
and
just
and
every power
also
you could think
different
of.
types of like heroes you could create, as
Yeah,
well as like you could like match different types together. It was great.
yeah. It wasn't enough that you were an altered human, which is what Spider-Man and Fantastic Four were. People
Yeah,
who were
yeah.
not mutants
You could
but
be a
mutated.
demon or an angel.
Yep. Yeah. It wasn't enough that you were an alien. You had to get down to the nitty gritty of what's your species, and were you born on Earth, or did you come from outer space? Are you from the home planet, or are you from a colony of the planet?
Cyborg angels is where it's at.
There you go.
Yeah, that definitely brings back some fond memories. I remember as a kid playing that game, but we never actually played it like and ran through adventures. But we would just play like whatever the wrestling um, federation or body was in Marvel. We would just do wrestling matches for that, so we could
That
just fight.
that's pretty cool. I never got to really run a long campaign at that. Years later, I would get the Marvel Heroic Age, the Marvel Heroic system from Margaret Weiss Press Productions, designed I think by Cam Banks and several other people, which unfortunately you cannot get these days due to licensing issues. But it was a fun system. I ran a 50 States Initiative game where the heroes were the hero team of Maine, the official heroes of Maine.
Yeah.
And so the Maine put them up in a restored motel. So they said, "Yeah, congratulations, we're Maine. We don't have a lot of money. You get to live in this motel that no one else wanted."
Nice.
And it was a lot of fun. I think the most fun thing I did, mechanically speaking, was at one point they helped out with an apartment building was on fire, and I treated the way the system worked, because it was Cortex Plus, which is now you can get from Fandom, I believe, publishes the Cortex system.
Yeah.
And because of that, I was able to very easily model the fire of the building as a monster. So it had attacks and it had weaknesses, and it could be attacked back. And you couldn't just hit it, obviously, because it's a building on fire, but you could do things like spray water on it, or kick up, the speedster could kick up a storm, a sandstorm, or they could rescue people go in and rescue people from the building. And if you fulfill these conditions, you knock down its health. And if you got it to zero, maybe the fire was out, and you defeated the fire monster, even though it wasn't a sentient fire monster. It was really cool that you could model it that way. Though I could turn rescuing people from a building and putting out a fire into a battle. That was very exciting for the players.
I don't know if you've seen the TV series, or there was, I don't know if it was on someplace before Netflix, but Schitt's Creek. And when you said like they just put them up in an abandoned motel, it just made me think of that for some reason.
Oh, I actually have it.
So it's like displaced rich family that lost all their money, but as a joke, he bought the dad buys a son this town, but they don't actually owning it doesn't actually do anything for them, but it did allow them to go there and get put up at the motel, and they kind of like lived there for a while.
That is awesome. Yeah.
So Spellhawk Press mentions Lewis Porter Jr. is working on Amazing Universe. I've been wanting to check that out. I love Lewis Porter Jr. When we got involved with Started Nerdarchy, I found him pretty fast, and I love listening to his videos. I'm glad he just finally got a mic that I can actually hear. His early videos were so rough to listen to, but he's always had like a lot of great insights into game design and the industry.
Yeah, he just works. I admire that. He keeps putting stuff out and doing whatever he can, and realizing that like a shark, you cannot stop.
Yeah, he's the Jaws of the RPG industry.
Yeah,
you're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, they need a bigger boat because it's just he'll move on. If something doesn't work, he'll try something else and he'll keep going.
I mean, what more can we do in life, really? Like, that's it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Whether you're a publisher or a freelancer, you got to hustle in this industry because if you're not doing something, what you're doing, what you've done, is not going to earn you enough money to live off of.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a principle in business in general. Like, if you're not moving forward, you're going backwards,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah.
So, what other games do you guys put out?
We put out right now our two big lines are Cyberpunk, which we're doing Cyberpunk Red. That's newest edition, came out last November. And then The Witcher, which is on its 3-year anniversary because it came out about a month after I joined the company. And that's based off the Witcher video games from CD Projekt Red, which are based off the novels, the Polish novel series. They are in the same, they're based off the same material, though not connected to the Netflix show, which people may be aware of. So it's the same. You can play those characters, though it's more fun, I think, if you play original characters. Just like in a superhero game, I think it's more fun to play an original character necessarily than it is to play Spider-Man.
Agreed.
We put out those are our big lines, which we are currently developing new material for. But we also keep our older lines in print, which includes Castle Falkenstein, which we've talked about, Mechton Zeta, which is giant robots role-playing. The big difference between this and other giant robots is that we focus heavily on robot design, mech design. So, and then we try to be as multi-universal as possible in terms of genre. So you can build your Pacific Rim Jaegers, you can build your Robotech fighters, you can build Transformer-like characters, you can build your hard suits from Bubblegum Crisis, and you can make your world, your setting more like those, or you can make very militaristic or more. Hey, for some reason the young people make the best pilots. I don't know why. The older pilots suck, but the young people are the ones we want to more bounty hunters in space if you want to. Or we also put out Teenagers from Outer Space, which is the very first anime role-playing game and the first game we ever published as a company way back in 1985, currently on its 3rd edition, where there are teenagers on Earth from space. Why? It doesn't matter, because it's funny. It is a comedy anime style role-playing game. Last year, we put out a supplement about fishing, because every good Japanese-inspired role-playing game has a fishing game, and had a fishing mini game, and ours didn't, so we made one. And then finally, there is Cyber Generation, which is a spin-off of Cyberpunk, which is basically take a healthy dose of your X-Men, which is teenagers with powers, put them up against a fascist capitalistic society, and let the fireworks fly.
Nice. What is the crowd favorite?
The crowd favorite is Cyberpunk, with absolutely no doubt. That is our biggest seller. It is currently and has been in the top 5 over at Drive-Thru RPG since its inception. We went through the first edition, and it was the first edition of Cyberpunk was the largest print run we've ever published, and we went through it in 2 weeks and had to go to a second printing. Sorry, a little bit of humble bragging there. We're very proud.
Oh, no worries, man. Brag away.
It is connected to Cyberpunk 2077 in that it takes place in the same universe. They based their game off our game, though Cyberpunk Red takes place in 2045 before 2077. And it is actually Cyberpunk, since it was published, is the game we're known for. It is the Cyberpunk game that is just pure Cyberpunk. And we're pretty proud of it. Witcher does very well. The other lines are fan favorites, but they are niche games, and we're not, we understand that.
How restrictive is it to work with like a licensed brand like The Witcher? Like, do you have leeway when it comes to marketing, or are you in a really narrow defined space?
Oh no, we could do whatever we want in marketing wise. We cannot say, hey, we can't lie, which is bad.
You gotta be a politician to do that.
But we could put out, we could buy advertising however much we want. We can say whatever we want. We can put stuff out. We can put out free content. Like, for example, we have what we call DLCs, which are basically small PDFs people can download for Witcher and Cyberpunk and Falkenstein for that matter, and teenagers, because the fishing minigame is free.
So hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot here, but
no.
This is just like an observation.
Yeah. so this is something happens. If you listen to the guys who were at West End back in the Star Wars days,
Yeah.
they will talk about how they had, Indiana Jones way back in the day. TSR put in an Indiana Jones game, and Spielberg's company said, no, you cannot put in rules for making characters because we don't want people. We want people playing Indiana Jones. And the problem was, so you had people playing Indiana Jones, and then who else are they going to play?
Yeah.
They could play Short Round, and Marion, which Marion was cool, no doubt, and Marcus Brody. Marcus Brody was cool, but with no character generation rules, that game went nowhere very quickly. We have a lot of leeway they give us. In fact, it's a reciprocal relationship. Yes, we have to run things by them. We have to say, can we make this up? And they say yes or no. Okay. But at the same time, for example, our third product for the Witcher line was called A Witcher's Journal. It's a bestiary, but we didn't want to just put out a book of monsters. We wanted to tell a story. So we decided to set it as a journal from a Witcher from the early days of the Witchers as a profession. The Witchers are made. They are children who are put through various alchemical transmutations and mutations and horrible training. And a lot of them died at first because they were still learning how to do the process. So we made a story of one of the first Witchers to survive the process. We said to CDPR, CD Projekt Red, is it okay if he's the guy that founded the Griffin School? Because Witchers are divided into schools. And they said, sure. And we said, because we said, here's our idea for this character. Here's what he'll look like. Here's what he'll be like. Is this cool? They said, sure. And not only were they happy with it, they turned around and CDPR puts out a Gwent mobile game, or a Gwent game where you can play Gwent, the card game from The Witcher, against other people or against the computer. They gave him a card.
Nice.
So they took what we made, and technically speaking, anything we make is approved by them and therefore officially part of the video game version of the universe, of the Witcher universe. But it was nice to see them take our stuff and incorporate it directly into their products as well. So that was fantastic.
Like that happened with the West End Star Wars game a lot too. Like because there's a lot of stuff that was just like up in the air. We don't know. And then they got this group of people that did actually a lot of work, and they're like, oh, yeah, this actually works.
And if you watch to this day, Owen Casey Stevens, who is now lead developer of Fantasy Age over at Green Ronin, but was Starfinder developer for a while, chief developer over at Paizo.
He's been around a long time. He's done a lot.
Did Star Wars over at Wizards of the Coast back when they were doing the D20 Star Wars. He will occasionally post on Facebook. He says, I was watching Rebels or The Mandalorian or reading this book, and here's something that we made back in the day. Or even he'll go back further. He'll say, here's something from the old West End game. So to this day, you're watching this and this stuff still filters in. So and you're seeing this all the time. There are probably more licensed TRPG products now than there have ever been, even going back to the heyday of West End when West End was doing Star Wars and Xena and Hercules and all these products. And companies are out there, they're realizing that it's good advertising to have a role-playing game or a board game based on your work. It helps development of stuff that you can use when you're not developing stuff yourself. Is that proved it? West End was developing Star Wars when no one was developing Star Wars stuff, right? And it creates, whether you want to or not, a series Bible which you can hand to other creators to say, take these role-playing books. Here's everything about our world in relatively easy to digest ways. And that happened. Timothy Zahn, back when he was writing the Heir to the Empire series, Lucasfilm sent him a whole bunch of West End stuff and said, here is everything you need to know about Star Wars.
Now, maybe this is just my impression, and it could be completely wrong, but I just don't feel like RPGs that are licensed get much penetration in the fandoms of those licenses. I feel like you just end up like preaching to the choir, kind of, in the sense that we're just getting people mostly playing these RPGs that already play RPGs and happen to like the other thing as well.
It's a yes and no. So Cyberpunk 2077, 2 years ago, CDPR. Cyberpunk 2077 is, for those of you who don't know, it's a video game based on Cyberpunk 2020, which is a game we publish, the second edition of the Cyberpunk role-playing game. couple of years ago, they came out with the trailer, not the trailer with Keanu Reeves, but the trailer before that. And this is what led to me being hired. After that trailer came out, sales of Cyberpunk 2020 jumped 400%. We were still selling it. We had, we still had it in print. And the reason was people were desperate to know about that world.
Yeah.
They wanted to know about the Cyberpunk world. We were the best source of information. Plenty of people have bought the Cyberpunk products specifically to learn about the Cyberpunk world. The same is true of Witcher. People have bought Witcher's Journal not because they want to ever play Witcher. They may not have even bought the core rulebook, but a Witcher's Journal contains new canon information about that world, about the origin of the Witchers as a profession, as a group, the evolution of how they went from being just Witchers to multiple schools of Witchers. And as a result, people have bought that book for that reason. Now, at the same time, is it deep penetration? Because if Star Wars has 10 million fans, maybe 10% of those 10 million fans have bought the role-playing game either to play or as a source of lore. But and that's part of it. People are very careful about what they get, and part of it's that you can go to your local Barnes and Noble and pick up books of Planets of Star Wars right off the shelf. But at the same time, it's just we don't have the same kind of market penetration that Planets of Star Wars book has, or that World of the Witcher book from Dark Horse has. We don't get into the Barnes and Nobles of the world, and so we're not as easy to find. And a lot of people are intimidated by the math, so it's not there. But another example, after the Netflix television series, the first season of the Witcher Netflix television series came out, we completely sold out of our second printing of the Witcher.
Okay, that was actually going to be my follow-up question. I didn't know how the timelines kind of matched up with you guys making the game and the series.
Yep. They put out the series a year or two after we put out the book, and we ran through the second printing as a result of that. I cannot tell you for certainty how many of that was, oh, I'm a gamer, I want to play Witcher because I just saw the series and I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
And how much was I'm a Witcher and, oh, there's a role-playing game. But increasingly, that's an overlap. You'll get, I don't want to call them casuals. Every gamer is a gamer. Whether you just watch games, whether you play every once in a while, or whether you're playing all the time, you are a gamer. But people who are new, or people who aren't playing every week, people who only play occasionally, are learning that there are other games besides D&D. And so they're looking around, and I think they'll gravitate towards, oh, there's an Expanse game. I like the Expanse. Or there's a Witcher game. I like the Witcher. Or Fallout's great, and there's a Fallout game. So, and I think that's also a reason why we're seeing more and more license, because we're getting people growing beyond. They came in through Critical Role or Stranger Things or the Rick and Morty basic D&D set that was at GameStop, right? And now they're saying, oh, I've done this. What else is there? And they look around and they're going to latch onto something familiar. And that familiar thing is more likely than not going to be a licensed property like Witcher or The Expanse or Fallout or Elder Scrolls.
So internally, do you have discussions like, how can we try and engage these people that are into the Cyberpunk video game or into The Witcher? How can we try and penetrate deeper, or is it kind of just like we built, if we build it, they will come?
No, we do have discussions about that specifically, and we found so before 2077 came out, we ran what we call 365 days of Cyberpunk. Every day for a year, from the January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, we put out a Instagram type fact box that told you something about the Cyberpunk world or Cyberpunk the game every day. And our biggest audience for that was not people who were already into the game or role players. It was people who were looking forward to the video game.
Okay.
And so, yeah. And, we were very clearly the experts on it. We were putting it out there. So we done our best to appeal, but not to, and we've been very fortunate that the existing video game forward websites and such like Polygon or IGN, they're looking to expand their coverage to all things geek oriented. So they're now covering pop culture TV and so forth, but they're also starting to cover tabletop role-playing games and board games. And they start with D&D because that's where everyone starts. But then they look again at the companies making stuff that their readers will be interested in, which are video game and television tie-ins, like Cyberpunk, like Witcher. And so we've been very lucky there. We're not going out of our way to say take out advertising on those sites because it's cost prohibitive because they're charging AAA video game rates, and not tiny role-playing game studio rates. But we are lucky, and we are reaching out because anyone who watched the comic book industry from the 90s to now knows that sticking with your fan base and only your fan base is a good way to die, because your fan base gets older, your fan base dies off, your fan base gets money they have to spend on other stuff. You've got to be constantly attracting new blood. That's just the simple fact of the case.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the idea with the Instagram, with the 365 days, that's a great idea. Because I mean, just from the outside looking in, I look at like Fantasy Flight Games, right? They had the release of all these Star Wars movies, and they had all these licenses, and I'm like, those licenses got to be uber expensive to begin with, and if you can't penetrate into into the fandom, I just have to wonder, is it really worth it?
Based on what I know of how much board and miniature games make versus how much role-playing games make, which is board and miniature games make a whole lot more money. I would say the Star Wars license was paid for mostly by X-Wing and similar miniature games, and the role-playing games was a very nice bonus on top of that.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think of it that way.
If Fantasy Flight had only been doing, if they had only gotten a license for a role-playing game, I don't know how well they would have done. Disney licenses are expensive.
And I imagine, the suits are probably sure, they probably saw them both as the same thing.
There's the question. Does it matter? Is there a difference between Star Wars Monopoly and Star Wars the role-playing game, besides the fact that Star Wars Monopoly probably sells a hell of a lot more?
Yeah.
To them. I'm going to point out, someone asked a question, which I think we should answer because it's nice.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I missed that, Dave.
The question was, are we in a golden age of RPGs? Are they more popular now than ever? The answer is no, they're not more popular now than ever. If you look at, oh gosh, I'm going to look it up because I have it on my podcast. I have it in my podcast subscriptions. There is a podcast. I'm going to go down this list. They haven't updated in a while, huh?
Really, you don't think we haven't passed the 80s yet?
It's a tough thing to say. I think it's possible, but I think if you look at the sales, it's possible we're having individual sales, like some books may be selling more. But if you look at the sales based on the numbers, as best we can, because Wizards of the Coast doesn't put out numbers. And when you're looking at RPGs more popular than ever, you really have to look at Wizards of the Coast's numbers before you look at the D&D's numbers, before you look at anything else. But if you look at them compared to the numbers that we've seen, and we do have those numbers because they are plot points. There's a Benjamin Riggs puts out a podcast called Plot Points. He's working on a book about how TSR was sold to Wizards of the Coast. And he's done deep dives because TSR got sued and was sued a lot. And as a result, a lot of their numbers are in the public record.
Okay.
And the sales figures are mind-boggling. Not just the core rulebook sold millions of copies, but box sets sold millions of copies.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we are surpassing that. I also don't know that, for example, there used to be a time when there were clubs all over the place. Literally, you could go down on any day of the week and find a role-playing club down at your local youth center.
Not my town.
Or that, now, does it have the market penetration or the pop culture media penetration? I think, yes, possibly. I think that more than ever, it's more mainstream than it's ever been. And that's important. And more importantly, I think, there's more opportunity for more role-playing games to reach people than there ever has been.
Growing, it's still growing. I mean,
Yep.
60,000 people tune in to Critical Role.
Yeah, I think
It's insane.
that's a huge thing. I don't, that's major. There are people who, for them, and this isn't new. The Japanese have been doing this for decades, but for
Yeah.
them, role playing games is a spectator sport. That's cool. That's fantastic. Or they'll watch it and they'll say, "Oh, I could do that," or try it. And like I said, it's not new. The Japanese have been putting out novelized versions of the role play. That's what Records of the Lotus War, which is a great anime, and I highly recommend it. That's what it is. It's an anime based on a written record of a role playing campaign.
There's a lot of things that are coming out that are like that. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Actually, was it?
The Expanse is like somebody's game, like GURPS game, that they then turned into novels, that they then turned back into a role playing game, or got turned into a role playing of itself by Green Ronin, and then became an Amazon show.
Yeah, and that's nothing new either. There's a fantasy author whose name I'm looking up now, Raymond Feist, who is most famous for his Rift War cycle of books. That was a role playing game campaign from like the 70s or early 80s.
Yeah,
that got turned into a book saga. I'm always surprised it has not been turned back into a role playing game saga, role playing game. But it could be he's just grown beyond it, or there's legal complications. Because, but yeah, no, that's been going on for a while. There's a couple of things out there. Sometimes I look at The Witcher and I think, oh wow, this feels an awful lot like somebody's the books feel an awful lot like somebody's D&D campaign.
Yeah, and then I mean, like right now, there's a Kickstarter going on. They probably raised $1 gazillion from the guy that founded World of Warcraft, which is based off of him playing, wanting to video gameize, D&D essentially.
Yeah.
Now he's doing a 5e supplement.
That I think is the biggest difference between now and then. It is very possible things were selling more back then, because keep in mind, we had a lot more market penetration into chain bookstores like Walden Books.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I didn't get any when I was a kid. I didn't get any of my books at a game store. Like I didn't even know I would be an adult before I even went into a game store. And a lot of in our area, most of the places that I went they weren't game stores. They were comic book stores that had maybe a gaming section.
Yep.
But when I was a kid, B. Dalton and Walden Books, I would go to the mall, I'd hit one and then the other. My grandparents would be like looking at me, "Can we go now?" And I would just like hang around in that section until they would buy me something. So. Yep.
And so it's not quite the same. You can get D&D at Barnes and Noble these days, but it doesn't quite have the same. It's not quite the same, where you have a little bit more of a wider range. But my point is the big difference between now and then is now we have celebrities who are gamers or gaming celebrities, not only on the one side with your Critical Role and your Adventure Zones, but on the other side where you have literal celebrities. Mike Pondsmith, our boss, and the guy ran a game, and today I'm blanking on all the names.
It's okay, it happens.
Shaggy. Who played Shaggy in the movie?
Oh, Matthew Lillard.
Matthew Lillard was in it. I apologize, Matthew, if you're watching this. You're a great guy. I've enjoyed my interactions with you. I'm just blanking on names today because I'm old. And you have Vin Diesel playing games, and you have
Manganiello and
and it's just if you were alive, and it's a shame he's not, we could probably get Robin Williams into a couple of games because he was a gamer.
Yeah.
But the point is we have celebrity gamers and gamers who have made their celebrity by gaming, and that is a big difference between now and then. I mean, you're talking about Kickstarters. There's the new 5e supplement, City of Bards, which is being the face of that campaign, a big contributor. She's also a writer on it, is Satine Phoenix. And her celebrity now is mostly about gaming.
Yeah. She should be on tomorrow. Actually,
cool.
It was just announced we're one of the stretch goals. We're doing one of their side quests.
That is awesome. And
Yeah.
I've never had the luxury of meeting her, the pleasure of meeting her, but I know from people who we have friends in common that she is a fantastic person and a very passionate gamer.
Yeah, she's awesome. We um we had her on one of these live chats when she had taken over for Matt on GM tips, and then she's like, "Hey, if if you were closer, we'd have you on. I'd have you guys on GM tips." And I was like, "Hey, we got this thing called an aeroplane. When do you want us out? Well, out in LA." And that was kind of like a beginning, of the friendship. Which, I mean, that's like one of the best things about this hobby is like the friends that you make. But
Yeah.
no, Satine is awesome and one of the most genuine people I know.
Yeah, and
So
it's great because she can do that and she can lend her star power to a project and help that project succeed. And I don't know that she would have been able to do that 20 years ago.
well, also too, it's like Joe Manganiello, Satine Phoenix, Mark Meir, like all these people, they have like a completely different face than what people expect when they think of tabletop RPGs, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, let's be honest. When Joe is
this
being
is
a
what they're
werewolf, no one's
expecting,
looking at
right?
Joe's
So,
face. I've met Joe. Joe is a very attractive man.
yeah,
I don't think they're necessarily looking at his face so much as his abs,
yeah,
but he's also a very intelligent and very canny gamer.
yeah. So the face of gaming itself. There's a YouTuber called Dungeon Coach, and he's like he coaches track and field at high school, and like he runs D&D games that are just like all of his like athletes. So it's such a bizarre space to me, coming from where the hobby was when I started to where it is now. When you talk about penetration, like literally everyone from every different walk of life is playing these games now.
Well, and I will still watch a show, and I don't watch much network television anymore just because we cut the cord and we have streaming services, and we're very, we watch less television and are more picky about what we watch as a result. But every once in a while you'll see role playing games show up, and I don't know if they're trying to make it simple for the show, but it never actually feels like any of the writers have played a role playing game. And they still go for the easy nerd jokes. And I'm thinking, easy nerd jokes. Have you seen the people who are playing?
Yeah.
Have you seen the muscles on these people? This is not, but I'm glad that it is something that has gotten a lot more acceptance and a lot more understanding. And that, I think, happens. This happens with every form of media. There were people when books were introduced, they said, oh no, we can't let people read books. Their minds will be corrupted by new ideas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also like the meme about screens and phones and stuff like that, but then they show an old timey photo of a bunch of guys getting their shoes shined with their faces in newspapers, right? It's like,
no one ever talked to each other. That was never a thing.
We don't do that anyway. Have you met people?
Yeah. I've been on a New York subway. Everyone studiously avoids looking at everybody.
Yeah. So JD wants to know, what's your favorite game store you've been to?
Oh, I have not been to many. I used to have a regular store down in North Carolina that I went to every once in a while. There was one in Albany way back when they survived on Magic cards. They were smart enough to carry Magic when it first came out. And it was the owner wanted to open a genre bookstore, fantasy and science fiction. And they started carrying Magic stuff. And the Magic stuff allowed them to pay the bill so they can carry books. That was what they did. But I don't think it's there anymore. I don't have a local one because I live in the middle of nowhere. So my favorite game store, quite honestly, is the vendor hall at either PAX Unplugged or Gen Con. Because there is nothing quite like going through hundreds of booths, all carrying games, often with the designer of the game right there for you to talk to just answer your questions, perk up your interest. You specifically put money aside for it. The energy, it's like being at a stadium in a football game or a baseball game. The energy of the crowd is feeding you. Your energy is feeding them back. There's nothing quite like it. I miss going to physical conventions.
So I want to say the first like actual um local game store I actually had where it was like, you know, they actually had comic books, but they only had recent ones. They didn't have back issues, and it was just like the new ones. But most of the store, the space was dedicated to gaming. It was called All Things Fun. It was, you know, in South Jersey for years, and then they opened up a second store in the joint bases of Fort Dix, which is completely useless to me, um, because you know you can't go on the base if you're just a civilian. But then, like soon after that, you know, after they opened the second one, the first one shut down before too long. But the reason why it was my favorite was, um, you would walk in there and like it was brightly lit. I feel like most of the, you know, stores I'd been into prior to that, and even a lot of them now, they're like, one, they're comic book stores with a gaming section. Two, they're dank and dingy. They look like an adult bookstore when you go inside because it is so like if there's windows, they're covered over with posters. There's like no natural light that comes in whatsoever. And
Yeah,
this place just had like giant windows like all over the place, and light was streaming in, and wide
uh,
open space with tables.
I think that's changing, especially with gaming cafes and gaming
Yeah.
pubs. People are starting to realize that decor and presentation are just as important as anything as inventory. I think some of the cases it's not so much the business owner's fault. You know, they get whatever space they can afford, and they can't afford much on a gaming salary. You know, and so they get, you know, old storefronts, and they can't afford the renovations to make it bright and shiny and new, and they're just dealing with what they have. But more and more we are getting that, and that's important too, because you want new gamers to feel like they're not going into someone's murder basement.
Yeah.
You want them to go in and they feel comfortable and safe. Women who are gamers or new to gaming especially, who want nice open space and don't want to be, you know, turning around every 5 seconds to stare into a poster of a giant, buxom, scantily clad woman.
Or feel trapped. Yeah, it was just like the other thing. My father-in-law, who's a Muggle, would
Mhm.
do these like golfing outing events for his church, and would go around to different businesses. And like he went to that place. He's like, "Oh, I really like this place. It's really nice. It's open. It's friendly. It's inviting. You know, there's a lot to be said for that." And I've gone to like other specifically gaming stores are much better at that. But you know, like you know, right here in South Jersey, like you said, one of it is, you know, it's the space. You have to work with what you have, so sometimes that can be difficult. But I feel like when it's set up for gaming, it is tends to be much better because they're like, well, we need room for people to game anyway, which opens it
Yeah,
up.
yeah. There was the game store I was at in North Carolina was nice and big and bright. They specifically didn't cover the front windows. It was in a strip mall, so there was, you know, plenty of natural light. And then they didn't crowd as many tables as they could into the back room. There was plenty of space in their gaming section, which was really nice. It actually, in the long run, if you think about it, didn't have that much in the way of gaming shelves. They had evergreens, and then they would order whatever you wanted. So they focused more on having a nice open space where people felt comfortable sitting down and gaming. And that was important. Though now that I think about it, one of these days, since I am an hour away from New York City, I really do need to take a day trip down, set aside time, and go visit the Complete Strategist, because I feel like being this close and not going to one of the premier and oldest gaming stores in the country is some horrible crime that I'm committing.
Yeah, when we went out to LA, we did like a fan meetup, and there was we did it at one of the gaming stores, and they were really um, welcoming to us. It's killing me 'cause now I can't remember it. Satine was the one is, you know, suggested it, and you know we got together with like I don't know, like a dozen fans or whatever, and ordered a bunch of pizza and ran some games, and you know they actually had like a you know, it was a huge gaming store, and then they had like an upstairs, but it was open so you could see like to the gaming floor below, where they had tables set up for gaming, which was a lot of fun.
That's neat.
Yep.
Um, I know there's a place in London, of all places, where it's a game pub, and I'm told it's got a beautiful setup, both an upstairs and then a downstairs gaming room.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. I like the idea that people are learning that gaming can pair with other things, like
So
a cafe or a pub.
there's a pub in Canada. I would love to check out sometimes, only because they have the largest collection of creature curation pieces, which is Brian Collin. He built these like monster heads from his D&D world Revlo. I think he has it for Fate as well. But like his son would like make up monsters and then he would sketch them and he would sculpt them. And they're like you like if you're at Gen Con or Origins or any big cons, like the first thing you notice is like this monster beak hanging out in the, out of a booth, and it's like life size. So we'd literally get like I guess there's like styrofoam heads or whatever they use for taxidermy, and he would get those, and then he would like sculpt on top of them. But,
that's cool. I am a horrible visual artist of any kind, so I'm always impressed by anyone who can.
It's sorcery and witchcraft.
Like it really is. They take something that looks nothing like something and turn it into something, and how?
Yeah, we were playing the Expanse RPG, and Runehammer has a YouTube channel, and he was in the game with us, and he was like doodling the whole time that we're playing, but like he would incorporate like notes into his doodles, and he was like still fully engaged in the game, like and we're since everything's virtual, and we're watching him like draw and basically create these illustrations like super fast, while role playing and incorporating the notes into the set from the session into it. So you knew he wasn't like zoning out and like phoning it in. He was like right there. To me, that blows my mind. I can barely do one thing at a time.
Yeah. What's the saying? There are many artists who can write, but not many writers who can art.
Yeah, for sure. So we're just past the hour mark. Sorry, folks, if you still had questions. I've enjoyed chatting with you. Final words before we head out?
I have to promote. We are currently involved in 2 Kickstarters over on Kickstarter, because that's where you do Kickstarters these days. Sorry. One is called Cyberpunk Red Combat Zone, which is a skirmish miniatures game set in this world of Cyberpunk Red. It's from Monster Fight Club. It's got lots of cool minis. Even if you're not a skirmish player, it is filled with minis, which you can use in Cyberpunk Red or really any urban, modern to near future urban game. And over Q Workshop, who make dice that tell stories. I love that slogan so much. Dice should tell stories. They are doing a Wizard hybrid set, which is metal dice with either wood or composite paneling. And they are beautiful. And we're working with them on that Kickstarter as well. So if you get a chance, please check them out, because you can get some cool stuff out of it.
Yeah, absolutely do that. There are links in the description. Links to the website. Does the website have links to the Kickstarters?
Our website, unfortunately, at this point in time, does not. I'll be doing on our Friday update. We'll be posting those, but it's fairly easy to find if you do a web search for it.
Awesome. Until next time, everyone. Stay nerdy.
Bye, all.